Heather Roy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak to this first reading of the Goods and Services Tax Exemption of Healthy Food Amendment Bill. The ACT Party won't be supporting this bill for a number of reasons, but I would like to commend the sponsor of the bill, Rahui Katane, for her intent and motivation in trying to raise the awareness of healthy eating in New Zealand. Unfortunately, there's one word that's been missing from this debate, despite the fact that it's been raging backwards and forwards across the House, and that is education. If there's one thing that is going to, if there is one going to, oh, it doesn't work, says Mrs King, who for her 9 years in government spent all her time saying education, education, education is the best thing since sliced bread. And this has been a very interesting and enlightening debate, because the Labour Party, who seem to have forgotten, Mr Speaker, that they were in power for 9 years, actually had the ability for 9 long years that we were subject to their policies and their draconian outlook on life, had the ability to put this in place. They had the numbers, they would have had the Green Party supporting them, they might have had the Maori Party supporting them, they could have done this, but they don't for a minute think that this is a good idea. And interesting, isn't it, that we've had the leader of the Labour Party and the deputy leader of the Labour Party and half the Labour Party here tonight, those that aren't in Christchurch. They've had all of the hard hitters down here saying what a good thing this would be for the country, and yet in their 9 long years in power, they didn't take 2 minutes to even consider then that this might be a good idea. There are several things wrong with this bill, Mr Speaker, but I do think that the sponsor of the bill should be congratulated for her motivation. Labour says, too, that this bill doesn't support the breadth, or they don't support the breadth of the healthy products in the bill, and so they just want it to be fruit and vegetables. They don't, that's right, because that's the principled, position when it comes to things. Now, is this bill, Mr Speaker, a bill about health and healthy eating, or is it a bill about taxation? That's the basic question that we have to come down to. And the assumption being made by those people that support the bill is that people's behaviour is going to be altered by dropping GST. Now, the Green Party stood up and told us what terrible things the supermarkets are, as if that's the only place you can buy fruit and vegetables because the prices are exorbitant. Well, has anybody given any thought, Mr Speaker, to the fact that people can actually grow their own fruit and vegetables? And do they? Not very many people do, but those who are serious about saving money actually go to the nurseries or the supermarket and they buy the seeds. Thank you very much, Mr Foss. They buy the seeds, which they do have to pay GST on, but I think that's a good thing too, and they can grow their own. And the thing is that there is no proof that people's behaviour will be altered in any way by reducing the GST on healthy foods. There's also difficulty, I think, with the definition of healthy food. And that actually, to be fair to Mrs King, was mentioned by her. What is healthy food? It is a confusing area. It is actually much more complex than it may seem. Fish and chips, for example, could be considered healthy because there are fish there and there are vegetables, and so should they have GST taken off them? I don't think they should. Scotch eggs was the example that Mrs King used, and I agree with her. Part of the reason that Scotch eggs taste so good is because they've got quite a high fat content, and they do have an egg in them, which is relatively healthy and is dictated for in the bill. But when you look at the Australian example, it's actually very confusing, and the reason we need to think carefully about the taxation aspects of this bill is that because the main problem of removing GST from certain products in the marketplace means that the universality of GST, part of a success, would actually be lost. Also, a precedent would be set if GST was removed from healthy food of whatever description. And that is the precedent of other goods that actually are seen as a good, a public good, that people should be encouraged to utilise more. Toothbrushes, for example, in Northland might be a good example. Would that actually affect people's behaviour? And to set a precedent by putting GST on healthy food would also bring into question the fact that perhaps other goods that were of benefit to society should be used. For those reasons and others that I haven't had a chance to address, Mr Speaker, the ACT Party won't be supporting this bill.